as well as all the other IP addresses. So the last IP address will be of the host. Now let's say you have reached out to this suspicious system and you wanted to know, okay, which process made that communication. Okay, the only information that you have right now is the port number, okay, which is, let's say, 42245. And what you do is that there are certain kind of artifacts. Let's say it was a Windows operating system which was running in this. So there are some kind of artifacts. Let's say one of the artifacts, for an example, is, let's say, it records the port numbers. It records the port numbers, for example, the old port numbers. And so what you can do is, let's say the communication luckily in a scenario was that it was well established. So let's say the malware was doing the DNS query to that c2evil.com not just once, but it was doing that in regular fashion. Let's say it every 5 seconds. It was making a DNS query to civil.com, c2.evil.com. Okay, so what will happen now that if you go and let's say you let me do one thing. You can see if this will work. So this was a DNS query. Okay, so what will happen? I need to actually then run some malwares on the system, which will make a kind of a connection with that malware domain. That actually goes into the malware field. But let's say keep it for simple. So let's say this the malware that was running, the process that was running in this host was making DNS query at every 5 seconds. So what will happen is that the netstat output. Let's do something. I'll just go to netstat sample output for malware, for example. Okay, and let me just grab one of the images. All right, yeah. So normally what happens is that, let me see. Okay, so normally what happens is that you will see that, okay, the IP address, the local host IP address in the netstat output, and you will see what is the foreign address over here. So the foreign address is c2.evil.com, for example. Okay, so the DNS query is being made at every few seconds. Okay, so or let's say for example, not the DNS query. Let's say for example, the malware is trying to communicate, or malware is trying to access the c2.evil.com over HTTPS protocol at every 5 seconds. Okay, so in that case, what will happen is that you will have the IP address of the malware. Okay, what port it is using in the netstat output, and then you can see that, okay, it is c2.evil.com :HTTPS, and the state is established. So there's an established connection between the c2evil.com. So now what also happened is that there are certain kind of artifacts. So one of the thing is that in the netstat, there is, I think there's a command called, you can also use like -a, then N and P, network and process. So it will also tell you the process path. Okay, which process is actually utilizing this 55306, for example. Okay, with process name, for example. Let's see if this figure comes out. Okay, so now you have got a really good picture. So let me just open that up. Okay, so this is a common, like, so you see the one of the flag is a P, like N, A, and then P. So if you see over here, this is a local address. You know that, okay, this is a port number. Okay, it is trying to communicate with the, let's say, c2.evil.com over here. Okay, which, like, let's say over 443, it is established. And then you see the process name, the process ID, and the process. So you see that, okay, there's a weird process with ID 5805. Which is kind of listing on 31337, for example. Okay, so then you know, okay, this is the process. You have reached out to the process, which is actually trying to communicate with that c2.evil.com. And then what you do is like, what you can do is like, let's say the process name is X7, for example. So you can just search for that process. You can look at the path. You can also get the path of that file where that file is running. And then you can quickly do some analysis on that process, like what this process is about. Is it malicious or not? And what's the capability of those processors? So that's how you will be kind of doing a quick, you will be kind of ending from a network alert to performing a forensic analysis of the system and kind of figuring out if that's a false positive or a true positive. So a true positive case will be that, okay, a true positive case will be that there is a process that is kind of connecting to that situ.evil.com, and that process is indeed malicious when you did the malware analysis. And the case where it can be false positive, let's say one of the thing is that, let's say the system is actually doing some kind of, like, let's say, web crawling activity. Like it is kind of doing a web crawling, in the sense is like it is visiting multiple kind of websites in one. Let's say for some machine learning projects, it is downloading images from multiple websites, for an example. So in that case, when you do the analysis, you see that, okay, it is not a malware. That process is not a malware, but it's code which is doing certain kind of malware. Let's say machine learning analysis. It is downloading certain images from multiple, like, huge list of websites, and that's where you'd say that, okay, this is not a malware case, but rather a false positive. Okay, it's not something that the system is actually reaching out to situ.evil.com, but is also reaching out to different other websites in the same phase and kind of trying to download the images, and it is not a malware. So that's where you will decide, based on the forensic analysis of the system, whether that case is like true positive or kind of a false positive. The other thing, what you can also do is like to kind of understand, rather than before, like, kind of jumping into the window of doing the forensics, you can also do certain other baseline work. Okay, so what you can do is, like, you know that, okay, what's the source IP address of the system. Okay, so because the forensic task is actually quite cumbersome, you need to do a lot of stuff. You need to log in, you need to do the malware analysis and a lot of stuff. So you can evade those things, and before jumping to that part, you can evade those things. And how you can do that? So one of the example that I gave was that the false positive case, where that system was trying to communicate with, like, let's say, thousands of websites and downloading images. So what you can do the traffic analysis of that system. And in the traffic analysis, you see that what you see is that, let's say, X and Y axis. So over, like, let's say, time, you see a huge spike of, like lot of websites which has been visited in a let's say in a domain, in a time duration of, let's say, 5 plus minus 5 seconds. Okay, so if you see certain kind of traffic that, okay, the system is trying to reach out to, like, let's say there's a huge spike in 443 destination IP addresses, you can kind of figure out from here itself that, okay, it is not something that the system is trying to communicate directly only to the situ.evil.com, but because your time duration is very less, let's say plus minus 2 seconds, you are seeing thousands of 443 going out to a lot of, like, thousands of unique IP addresses. You can understand from here that it is not something a malware, but it is something that's, it's a web crawling activity with a very high confidence. Obviously, there is certain risk, but in normal fashion, you can kind of figure out, okay, this is something kind of a web crawling activity rather than kind of a malware. And what you can do in that case, you can just reach out to the service team. Okay, the team which is handling that, let's say the HR team, or let's say the research team, for an example, that is handling this system. And before jumping to the forensic, you just discuss with them, guys, we are seeing that, okay, this system is trying to reach out to a malicious domain, and we are also seeing a web crawling activity traffic in the, can you tell us, like, if this web crawling activity is kind of valid? Okay, and if it is valid, is there a reason, like, why it is kind of reaching out to the situ.evil.com? So then maybe that they will come and they will tell you that, okay, they are doing some machine learning analysis and kind of they are doing some image download from multiple websites, and one of the database of the website that they have, it has the entry for situ.evil.com. And then before jumping on the forensics part, doing the analysis, you just close out the case from here itself, turning it as false positive. That is not something unique. It is, or rather than false positive, you close that case as benign positive, because NITS actually worked correctly over here. It actually alerted you on the non-malicious domain, but the only thing was, like, it is benign positive because thing is that it is not a malware case, but rather a web crawling activity. So that's how the normal investigation will look like from a SOC team. Yeah.
So I have a question
Yes.
here. So when,
Yes.
when, for example, the evil.com domain that you talked about, Sir, when during the forensics, when we are just going to virus total